Welcome to Chapter 6 of your Human Geography text, which is the Geography of Religion. So, again, this book is really cool because it takes a lot of the local culture within California and really introduces that on a global perspective. So, really, it's going to first define what is religion, which is essentially a group of people that have the same faith and beliefs, but really distinguishing the two types. Is it universal, meaning that it's something that anyone can join and that they're actually looking for converters? Or is it more ethnic, meaning that you're born into it, that you just can't join that religion, that it's something that you're born into? And so we'll really discuss the differences between those. Then moving forward throughout the text, it starts looking at then defining the different types of religions. Is it monotheism, having just one? Is it poly, having more than one? Is there even no gods or no religion in that aspect? So it really kind of introduces that whole terminology and aspect within religion. It also, which is interesting, brings into the ideas and values of cults. So you'll talk about religions, denominations, cults, and then congregations, and really discusses the values of cults. And I think that I'll mention cult again as being an interesting topic because essentially a cult is a group of people that believe in the same thing, and there's more of an in-depth definition of that, but really looking at the value of a cult, you can think of like when people go to those conventions, like anime conventions, it's really a cult of people. It doesn't necessarily have to have a negative denotation or connotation. It's just saying that these are a group of people that have believe in the same thing. Much like religion, it's a very important thing for a lot of people to have that faith, to be able to have a group of people that they don't know but believe in the same thing for that support. And it's really interesting when you get to start talking with more people, being at a community college that's very diverse. You get to speak with students from all different types of religious backgrounds, and it's very interesting to speak with them. I had one student in particular, he was from South Korea, and he was Buddhist, but he was going to a Catholic church because he was international, and there were other Koreans at that church. He goes, I'm not Catholic, I'm Buddhist, but I'm going to the church because there's other people like me that have the same values as me, that the same food, the same language, and it's really a sense of community more than anything for him. So it's really interesting to be able to speak with people along those lines. And that's something that's very important for geographers, is that we need to be able to listen, that we need to be able to then sit back and observe. We're not here to say that one religion is right or one is wrong, that people should or should not have one. It's more of being critical in the sense of inquiring and wanting to understand and to be able to learn a little bit about everything. So obviously the text will be going through some of the basics of Christianity, being of Eastern, Western, and other areas that Christianity has then moved across the landscape. And, will begin to introduce the topics of push-pull factors of religion, meaning that some of the more universalizing religions and how did they spread it? Was it by force, or was it through some form of bribery, or what's really the reason why many religions spread? And what's interesting is if you kind of relate that back to the previous topic earlier of language, is that a lot of language, the reason that was able to spread was because of religion. Think about Bibles and as an example. What language was that scripture written in? And then that language had to then be learned by the new people that were then learning of the new religion. Um, think about more local for us. You can think about the Spanish conquest with the missions within California. That a previous language and faith was being replaced by a new religion, a new language, forcefully. But then you start to then change those perspectives and those dialects, and how does that work across the board? Is that more universalizing, or is that an ethnic religion? And then you start answering these questions to understand more as to what is observed. Moving forward, starts introducing again other religions. We'll talk about to be Muslim, to be Judaism, Jewish temples, Hinduism, Buddhist. To start introducing a little bit of everything, which is really exciting because if you think about the California landscape, we've got a little. You can go in one community, you have a little bit of everything. You can visit all these different churches and experience what it is that they have to offer. Um, then talking more about religious diffusion, especially in the United States, cultural ecology, nature and religion. How does that play apiece. I think nature and religion is really an interesting topic, especially going back into agriculture and other topics that were discussed. Like the ideas of a Christmas tree and the environmental impact of Christmas trees and their demand for that export and import of those products, or even being with the decorations and the manufacturing of Christmas lights and those being transported, put on sale, reproducing, moving towards LED technology. It's really, when you start thinking about the bigger scheme of even commercialism within religions. Almost every religion that I can think off the top of my head, there's some form of commercial aspect, something that you have to buy. This is always very interesting. You buy, whether it's a particular type of clothing, whether it's you buy gifts, where you give money to the church, and there's a monetary value set to these. Obviously for sustainability of a lot of those religions and churches, but when you start looking at the nature of that religion, it's very interesting. Uh, Something else that moves forward that we will bring up a little bit into this text will be also politics, the separation of church and state, and how sometimes it's not as clearly defined as that separation. That there seems to be, especially when you think about politics, that people do vote on people, or vote for people based off of their religious background, because they have the same beliefs, whether it could be the right to choose, it could be based on gender inequality or gender equality, sexual inequality. These are attributes that people vote on, which then kind of blurs the line for the separation of church and state. So you'll begin to talk about that, talk about sacred spaces, landscapes, um, bring in the Amish culture, some of their attributes to society. So it really is a very big, interesting topic. Cemeteries, there's a lot of that brought up in the text because that is a landscape in which things are designed. If you've ever had the opportunity to go to one of the original forest lawns in Glendale, it's a beautiful park, beautiful venue, incredible amount of history. It's really truly a cultural landscape. What I'll leave you with, which is a link that I have shared, if you're interested into kind of diving more into religion, there is this theologist, someone who studies religion. His name was Joseph Campbell, and what he did is he wanted to learn about all religions. He wanted to learn about the premise of every religion on the landscape, but then to kind of remove the dates and times and names and really break the religions down to their metaphors. What are the true meanings? What were the large epidemics, pandemics, events, cultural events, people stories, kind of breaking it down into those really strong metaphors, and then trying to then realign every religion and try to see, is there some form of tendency, is there some form of foundation in which all religions align. And then in doing so, he was able to be very successful in doing that. And what's interesting about that is he had someone who was an understudy who was very interested in this as well. And this gentleman who studied under Joseph Campbell was so interested into that story, into how we can perceive different religions and kind of break out the names and places, but try to create one universal story, decided to take those metaphors and to create a movie out of it. His name was George Lucas, and the Star Wars family is actually a story based on the metaphors, kind of like an Aesop's fable in that sense, of teaching of right and wrong, of forgiveness, redemption. Uh, it's considered a biblical opera. It has a lot of religious background into it, which is quite interesting because it's obviously set in a different perspective. But it's because George Lucas wanted to take the study of Joseph Campbell and the idea of religion and how important it is for people to learn right and wrong, making choices, things like that. But how can we see this in a different landscape completely? Something that's more mythological, something that's more space and futuristic and things like that. And it's kind of interesting if you're into that whole perspective. But nonetheless, the big walkaway is discussing the different types of religions, their values. Again, this is not about what's right, what's wrong. You'll have a discussion that you'll be working on too. It's a very interesting discussion. Again, we are all academically inclined, critically thinking, strong adults that have opinions, and opinions are certainly wanted and supported. But just remember that everyone is entitled to their opinion. Everyone's entitled to feel that what they have is right and what some people might have is wrong. But we're not here to talk about what's wrong. We're here to learn and to inquire. So just be sure that you're cognizant of that during your discussion. But nonetheless, I am excited to learn more about what it is that you practice, what it is your heritage is, what is your culture, and especially when it comes into your religious landscape, the things that you do. Do you have a Christmas tree? Do you do a holiday bush, or do you not do anything at all, or do you what family values and stories do you give on to your children, and so on and so forth. So nonetheless, do enjoy, and we'll talk soon.